Riding into the Ermengarde Mansion in their rice is an awkward affair. Not only am I worried about scuffing the expensive leather seats, but I'm also worried about getting in the middle of another couple's spat. With the tension in the air, thick in the air, I can feel them staring at each other anytime, any other... What? You take this.
With the tension thick in the air, I can feel them starting at each other anytime. Nobody is saying anything, up until Mr. Wright tells his valet to turn the damn radio off.
Turn the damn radio off!
And for a moment, I think that he might start. But instead, he just stays quiet, and so do the rest of us. In the end, the sufferable silence stays. I've never been so glad to see a house. Stepping out of the car and up to the mansion meant that, the end of an uncomfortable ride, and I can finally take a deep breath of fresh air. The beauty of the place never fails to make me gaze in wonder every time I see it as well. Mrs. Wright moves towards the front door, keys in hand, and I can already hear Mr. Wright plotting.
All right, Hans, we're going to go in, but I want you to look around the place. Familiarize yourself with it. Know every nook and cranny, every inch of the lot. Go and see where we can put that vineyard and the other things we talked about. We'll want to know where to station security as well, so go around the perimeter and figure it out.
Scout the property and circle the perimeter on foot. You do know this is 46 acres of land, sir.
Well, you are not driving a car over the grass. Put those long, spidery legs of yours to good use. I didn't hire you to stand around and look intimidating. Go, mush.
Sorry, the fact that he said mush instead of mush.
I thought it was mush. Is it mush?
I thought it was mush, like it was...
With sled dog.
Because he said mush,
Yeah.
like...
Mushy.
Yeah. Like you stepped on a piece of fruit or something.
Someday I'd like to ask how Johannes... Is it Johannes or Johannes?
Johannes, I think.
How he can even stand and tolerate the man. Why doesn't he just quit? Certainly the pay can't be that good. Even I'm a bit put off by our mutual employer, and the only thing that keeps me from bailing is the fact that we've already signed a contract. At least I'll only be working with them during the duration of the project. He works with them every day.
Sometimes I think you hired me to make me suffer for your amusement.
Someday, I'd ask. I feel a bit bad for him. If it's any consolation, he'll be away from Mr. Wright, if only for a little while. We're able to enter the mansion after a bit of standing out there in the sun. This wretched, strange sunlight that is far too alien and rare. There had been a bit of a problem with Mrs. not knowing which key was which. The first item on the agenda would be the grand staircase. It seems sturdy during the open house, but a closer inspection might say otherwise. There are no obvious marks of damage, no wear and tear, probably rethreaded during renovations. Peeking under the grand carpet, the wood is properly installed with the bark placed down to prevent cupping. The carpet itself could use a vacuum, though. Structural conditions, from what I can see, without actually dismantling the thing, look to be in good shape, and the handrails and support posts are firm. I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's actually wider at the base of the stairs, or are they trying to do the perception distance thing?
Well, it's weird. I don't know. Rectilinear nonsense is always kind of bizarre in this sort of sense. I think they're doing a perspective thing. Scale's hard to tell.
The work on it should be commended. I can't look much more into the rest of the foyer, however, because Mr. Wright starts to hurry us into checking the dining hall.
So, what do you think? Certainly we can't turn this area into a garage.
It's Jacobean architecture. I'd say these would be pilasters and not buttresses, but you never really know.
Jacobean.
Is that what she said?
No, that's what you said.
Oh, what did she say?
Jacobean.
That's what I thought I said the first time.
No.
I'm gonna have to look back at that. I don't believe you.
They really liked mixing up these elements. You could say it was pretty avant-garde at the time. We might hit a support beam if we're not careful.
And in layman's terms?
From what I see here, we could risk great damage to the house if we try to turn the dining hall into a garage.
The man didn't look too pleased at this. There's a look of disappointment before he sighs and looks around the place with an air of defeat. When he moves to speak, I dread another unreasonable demand again.
This will stay a dining hall then. But if I may have another request instead, at least spruce the place up with some flowers, some plants or something. It feels so old and dead in here.
That's hardly unreasonable. Daffodils are a must, I presume.
The look that passes between the two of them, there is a genuine look of fondness there. This is the first time I've seen such an exchange between the two of them. If anyone are to see them like this, there is little doubt that they loved each other.
Of course, and I want a garden full of them. Now, if you excuse me, I'd like to look at the rest of the house. I'll just be around here downstairs, if anybody needs me.
That leaves Mrs. Wright and I.
He's quite fond of them, you know.
I can imagine. He looked terribly upset when we told him he can't have his garage.
I meant the daffodils. We always have a vase full of them in every house we own. Somewhere.
Why are you laughing?
It's just this, like, he's fond of them. He's fond of garages.
Yeah.
I'd like to think they may be about his mother. He never talks about her. I don't even know her name.
That's strange.
He likes to flatter, claim that they remind him of me, but he's always loved the flowers, even before we married.
Much like the piano, I didn't take him for a person who liked flowers. Daffodils least of all. What's next? Am I going to find out that Mr. Wright saves kittens from burning buildings?
I'll go and snoop about upstairs. You go and do whatever it is that you have to do.
When she goes without even asking if I need her here, I'm left standing to stare at the walls. Really, I don't need to do a thorough inspection of the building itself. It isn't really part of an interior designer's job. But the architect in me is committed to doing this task with every project. If I'm going to make a living space that have both form and function, I might as well make sure that the entirety of it's safe for my clients. Since I'm already here, I roam around the dining hall to check things off my punch list, if you will. But when it's time to move on, I hesitate. Mr. Wright said he would be somewhere around here on the ground floor, and I really didn't want to be alone with whiskey. I have to look through the place eventually, sure, but on the other hand, I can do it later when he's gone. I can go upstairs first if I want to. Which floor should I go first?
I'd go upstairs.
Why?
Because he's not going to be there, and if bad things happen, they'll be upstairs. That's where Hannah was going, too. So go where she is.
I feel like that'd be so strange to not finish the ground floor, though. Like, what bad things would happen besides them just bumping into each other?
The things that would come about from them bumping into each other, for one thing. And if people are going to be bumping into each other, I want it to be Hannah.
Okay, whatever.
So I'm thinking about how these things go. And what we're really choosing is who do we want to have affect our relationship with, is what this is really asking. And that's why I'm saying check the first floor. Okay.
I've already seen enough of this floor during the open house. Of course, I know that is just a convenient excuse. I just don't want to be in the same room as whiskey anytime soon. So I might as well just go upstairs first. The banisters on the grand staircase's landing are solid and at proper height. Any lower and they would be trouble. There's a small catch on the carpet though, but as long as nobody tries to run down the stairs until it gets fixed, things should be alright. That's funny. Which day was it that Isabella tripped down the stairs?
It was a few days ago.
Yeah. And the stained glass? Art. Restored, no doubt, in the image of the last lady and the Lord of Ermengarde. Or it was supposed to be, until Lady Charlotte's fiancé was brutally murdered.
Oh, you're fine. I'm just adjusting. Pretend I'm not even here.
Did you see someone was murdered?
Yeah, Lady Charlotte's fiancé. Fiancé?
By a witch. A witch of all things, from what I've read. You'd think the historians of this place will be a lot more scrutinizing, filtering out stuff like that. I'm amazed they bothered with it instead of replacing it with some generic cookie-cutter design. This entire piece alone would have cost roughly 500, even £1 million. Lady Charlotte Ermengarde and her beloved. Looking at the mosaic, it's not too far a stretch of the imagination to believe that the depicted images could be Mr. and Mrs. Wright.
I was thinking the same thing, because they're both blonde.
It can be easily assumed as such if one doesn't know the history of the mansion. Really, a place like this should be protected by the government as a landmark. But what can I do about it? Walking into the East Wing, I try to go into the theater, but it's met with an obstacle. The obstacle that is locked doors. 2 doors, 2, and both of them are locked. I'd be frustrated, would be, if I already hadn't snuck off while the Wrights were having their little business meeting with Miss Cooper before to take a peek. With what Mr. Wright wanted, we'd have to install a powerful projector, the type they use in cinemas as a projection screen. The seats would have to be reupholstered if they're to be any comfortable, and the walls will have to be covered in dark material, paint, wallpaper, or install wall-to-wall carpeting. Really, of all the rooms I could be jealous of, it's this one.
Same.
I could just picture myself in there watching old Kung Fu flicks.
Kung Fu flicks. Phew. Old Kung Fu.
Watching old Kung Fu flicks on a weekend-long marathon. Makes me wonder what kind of movies Mrs. Wright would like. Rom-coms, perhaps? Her husband, on the other hand, I'd rather not think about it. In the middle of my notation and planning, I don't even realize that I'm not alone until I'm caught standing in front of a locked door like a fool.
Were you meaning to go in there? I'm afraid we won't be able to open it up today.
Why? Is there a dead body? Huh?
Oh well, I wanted to, but it's fine. I can still survey the rest of the place.
Apologies, but the key was missing when they were handed over. They told us that they'd get right back to us with it.
Who's they? Dead body.
What? But aren't they supposed to hand over all the keys once property changes hands? That can be grounds to file a complaint.
They were already kind enough to let us move in so early. There's no need to raise a fuss about it. Worst comes to worst, we can call for a locksmith.
The air is heavy and somber when she grows quiet and glances out the window. Out towards the vast expanse that surrounded what would be their house. Their home. Then she looks back at me with a sigh and a bitter smile.
Flowers. Yellow flowers. Daffodils, dandelions, and sunflowers and the sort all up front. Just a whole garden of them.
You want dandelions? Aren't those weeds?
I mean, anything's a weed if you don't want it where it is.
They'll make the house look lovely, won't they?
Of course. A garden is a wonderful addition to any home.
As I say this, her eyes roam over me, scrutinizing and thoughtful. I have to hold back the shiver that threatens to run down my spine at being inspected so closely.
Yes, it must be nice.
We're still talking about the gardens, yes?
I mean not having to worry about what another person thinks of you.
What do you mean by that?
She lifts her hand and points to her wedding ring before it falls listlessly to her side.
Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I didn't marry Luke. There'll be no fights about walk-in closets or silly helipads. I could do with this place as my heart desires until there's nothing but content.
Is this before or after we had the discussion in the one spot where we're like, it's none of my business, but when we were playing Hannah? What's today again, the 24th? Yeah. Or when...
I don't know what you mean.
When we played as Hannah, we had a conversation.
Oh, about
with,
whether to leave?
Yeah. I want to know.
That was the day of the party, I thought.
Okay, we haven't had that yet. Yep, okay. So that's in 4 more days that conversation happens. Okay. Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right.
Did I already... Oh, she said it.
Then again, I wouldn't have bought this place if it wasn't a gift for him. I probably wouldn't even be in Luxbourne if it wasn't for him. Maybe I would have moved to London, Manchester, or Birmingham. I might have even left the country altogether. France, Germany, Spain, Canada, Sweden, even America. The possibilities would have been endless.
I don't know what to say to that. What is there to say?
I'm sorry, I must sound so petty and ungrateful. I do love him. So very much, even if he can be a bit difficult at times.
Oh no, not at all. I'm just confused why you're telling me this, of all people.
Because you slept with my husband.
Just a whim, I think.
She doesn't know that.
Just flights of fancy, that's all. Don't you ever think about one decision you've made in your life and wonder how much would change if you chose to do things differently?
I try not to dwell on the past, ma'am.
The key word is try, of course. Thinking of the past brings up too many ghosts. Memories of her. And I do wonder what would change if I just said yes when she asked for me. Maybe she'd still be with me. I return to the present, just like I said, I try not to dwell on the past.
Why don't you decide on your own?
Decide what?
You must have been quite the pair.
Decide what? Whether to leave? I don't understand.
I don't know.
The second answer sounds quite sad, though, because must have been saying that was in the past and not any longer.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of reaching for that second one, because I don't understand the first.
Well, I don't know how to articulate what my thoughts on the first one are, but that's not secretly my thought is to pick that one.
The first? Well, I don't...
The thing is, I don't... Like, I feel like I understand what it's trying to say.
What?
It was just like... Make up your own mind. I don't know.
Oh, like, don't talk to me about it? Why don't you figure it out yourself?
Well, I don't know.
I feel like if we say the second, she'll keep talking and then we'll bond.
Yeah? You think that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's do it. I think it'll just make everyone sad.
Maybe, but sometimes sadness brings you closer.
You must have been quite the pair, Mrs. Wright. Hannah Evans and Luke Wright taking Luxbourne by storm. At least, that's what I've heard.
That gets a giggle out of her. And can I be blamed if I like the way her eyes crinkle or how she sounded when she laughed?
Quite the celebrity couple, according to all the newspapers. But it wasn't always that way. Father certainly didn't approve of him at first. Why, he told me to stay away from him. Told me that I was too good for him. That's the usual overprotective dad speak, though. But of course you know that.
I don't. I was too busy keeping my grades up at boarding school to maintain my scholarship. Never mind the fact that I went to an all-girls boarding school, so father never had any reason to fuss over boys trying to date his little girl.
Everyone's parents are dead or dying.
Yeah.
And what did you tell him? Considering you are Mrs. Wright now, you or the mister must have convinced him otherwise.
Yes, well, I told him I was my own woman and I could decide who was deserving of me or not on my own. Thank you very much. That never stopped him from making sure Luke couldn't get anywhere near me without an escort and a guard anyway. Though he certainly wasn't that overprotective when I was dating Jack.
Maybe your father considered this Jack a more capable man?
I doubt it. Jacqueline was nowhere close to being any sort of a role model when we were in college. She was rebellious, reckless, and immature. Everything I wasn't. But she was quite the charming, stunning woman, and I think that made her quite likable.
That takes me by surprise a lot more than the fact that Mr. Wright's father-in-law didn't like him. That much was to be expected. But this? I have nothing against them because that's their thing, though the nuns and the priests would say otherwise. Although, wasn't she worried about the implications, the rumors that would have arisen about her dating another of the same sex? Especially someone of her social status.
You look surprised, Marianne. The first thing anybody needs to know about me is that I go after what I want. And when it comes to who I love, it doesn't matter to me whether they're a man or a woman.
It's a nice enough sentiment. Still, the thought that this lovely lady before me had once been with another woman, I can feel my cheeks heat up a bit and I panic, thinking they might be red enough for Mrs. Wright to notice. I can't tell, though a coy smile graces her lips.
Legs, we called her, because of how often she was running about because of one thing or another. Climbing up walls and, what do they call it now? Parkour. And also because of her, well, legs.
And you went after her?
Not right away. When I first met her, I wanted nothing to do with her. She was so improper and uncouth. But I slowly realized that didn't mean she was a bad person. On the contrary, she did many a good thing and was always so nice to others. I found myself confused. I couldn't figure out if I wanted to be her or wanted to be with her. So I approached her, told her that I might have fancied her.
And your father didn't mind?
He must have thought it was my form of rebellion. But he never watched out for Jack as much as he watched out for Luke. If I didn't love my father so much, if he hadn't raised me right, I think I might have told him to bugger off. He's never been more attentive of me than when I started bringing home dates.
I'm sure he loved you very much.
She laughs once more, a glow about her. I know, she says with a small smile.
I suppose I've taken too much of your time with my silly stories. You still have much to inspect?
I still have most of this floor, and I'll want a quick run-through of the ground floor again later.
I shan't keep you from your work any longer then. Just call me if you need anything. I'd like to look around myself.
When she turns to leave, she glances back at me before disappearing into the foyer. I look out the window from where she was standing, and I move on. Alone with nothing but my thoughts, and her.
Finally, some peace and quiet. Thought the old biddy would never leave.
It's utter madness, this hearing things. I reckon it's the stress, though I don't know what exactly I'm stressed about. If meeting Mrs. Wright has really thrown me for a loop, I'd be worried. If I'm developing some sort of psychosis or disorder, well, I'd call a doctor. But hopefully it isn't that, not right here and not right now. I mean, it could just be that personal talking cricket, the conscience, so to speak. And I'm only noticing now, though if it is, it isn't very helpful. Pushing the dilemma of voices in my head aside, I go back to work. But I can barely make it a few steps before everything tilts and shifts. I don't really stumble, but it feels like I'm being thrown off my feet and the rest of the world just follows. Though my feet stay firmly on the ground, and even if I stay mostly upright, I feel like I've been heaved and put off balance. I have to close my eyes in the hopes of willing the sudden sense of vertigo away, but when I open them... Well, I don't feel any less sick because of the sight that greets me. Blood dripped from the walls and the ceiling, pooling downwards and seeping into the curtains and the carpet. A wave of nausea, stronger than the last, hits me along with the overpowering stench of blood and gore. I want to bolt. The rational part of my head is telling me to flee. And I would have gladly done as it asked if only I didn't hear her.
In here, Marianne. Come on, I have something to show you.
I could have ignored it, would have ignored it, if I only heard it in my head. But I swear that this time it's coming from one of the rooms.
The attic.
Much further into the study.
Oh.
And I feel compelled to pay attention. I can't just turn around and leave. Not when it's her. I don't even think as I follow the sound of her voice.